All right, well, I think we will get started. Good day, everyone. I'm John Wazinski, the Executive Director of America Makes. Appreciate everyone taking a little bit of time out of your busy calendars to learn a little bit about what has been going on in America Makes and where we're at with the the AMCPR program, or the Advanced Manufacturing Crisis Production Response Program. I know many of you have been with us from the very beginning. It's hard to believe it's been 16 months now that this has been going on for, I would say a variety of reasons, but it has been a pretty wild ride for everybody. And I noticed a number of folks that were relatively new names to the community, or at least part of, this particular response that we're talking about today. So we're going to jump right in, go to the next slide, and we've got a pretty packed agenda for you today. The way it's set up, we're going to hit on a number of different topics, have a little bit of time built into each of the individual segments where you can ask questions. So I encourage everyone to use the Q&A function. So if you go into WebEx, you'll be able to use the Q&A versus I'm getting the note from Addie, who's running everything in the back end. Use Q&A instead of chat, so we can see them, and then they could be filtered over to us as the panelists. But we're going to go through. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview along with my colleague Georgette Nelson, and then we're going to jump into an overview on where we've been working as it relates to education and workforce development, specifically around response and recovery related activities, and then get into the demo, which is a physical, or I guess a cyber tool that's been built where we've used it to manage, the response. And then what is maybe the most exciting part, or it's been a pretty exciting last couple of months, we're going to talk through a series of scenarios. So if you've been tracking AMCPR, some of those terms that I just used will make sense. If not, we hope that it all makes great sense to you in the next hour or so. And then we'll close out with how to get involved, what the next steps are for the program, and continue with the Q&A portion at the end. So we'll go to the next slide. I just want to give an introduction to some of the folks that you'll be hearing from today. This is just a small sampling of the team that's been put together in order to, combat the, crisis that's been in front of all of us, and specifically that we've been working together with internal to America Makes and some external partners as well. Mention them. I'm John Wazinski, the Executive Director of the Institute. Joe Veronese is on. He is a VP and the CIO of NCDMM. He's been really spearheading the development of the exchange. We have a team of folks led by Georgette Nelson at NCDMM, and she is really, she hired in midway through the response and has been kind of leading the charge ever since. Jason Sally has been working with Joe very closely in development of the tool. Josh Kramer has been really our lead for all things education and workforce development for a few years now, but specific to the response. And then we've been working very closely with a couple of external organizations. Dr. Mark Cavalier, dear friend of mine, it was one of the earliest calls that we made as we were thinking about how do we as an organization get involved. He represents Deloitte. And then Jim Knotts from Quotient, who is someone that we've worked with in the past as well, has aided in development of the system. So they'll all give you a lot more detail here as we get into the meat of the webinar. But if you can go to the next slide, Georgette, I'll give you a quick, next slide, overview on AMCPR. So what this is a program that's been put together. It's really started very early in the pandemic response back in March, where we were all trying to figure out, how can we help? Everyone wanted to help, if we remember back to that time, but it was very disjointed, and there was a tremendous amount of interest in providing a solution, but we didn't really know where to turn. We were in a similar boat, but what we knew from the very beginning, it's interesting. We used a similar slide a little over a year ago when we first put together this vision for what needs to be created, and really at the center of it was the reality that a strategic and enduring infrastructure needed to be created. There had to be some common thread that pulled everyone together to make sure that we were working and operating against a common mission. And that's been our guiding light really since the very beginning of this pandemic. If you were joining over the past months, you would have seen, and we don't have a visual indicator on this chart per se, but there's been a dotted line that's shifted to the right over the course of the past year. Very early on, it was all about, responding, whatever that meant, bringing people together. The additive manufacturing community in general was a community that was very quick to get engaged and want to help. What we realized immediately, and really how we started to get involved in the beginning, was it became powerful when we convened that community together. We couldn't all be off running in different directions. And it was really important, and we'll get into it on the next slide as we kind of walk through the journey for everybody. It was about making sure folks understood who the different players were, across government, industry, academia, and beyond, and thought about how do we work together against this common mission. And then we started to work on what was really it is rather a do loop of how do we grow capability, and then how do we exercise that capability. And then I think of this as we look forward, as we get into this, the meat of the briefing today. We've gone through this activity. We went up the curve. We're going to show you what we've done to build for the community and with the community, rather, a tool in order to manage content. But then I've also scaled and exercised this capability through a series of different demonstrators. So, not necessarily thinking about it as it relates to COVID response, but instead, how does it create an infrastructure that it can be utilized for crisis response more generally? The reality is now we've done that. We could claim to have done it once or maybe even 7 times as we've gone through this, a series of 7 different scenarios. That loop needs to continue to iterate time and time again as we look forward. And we're seeing that all around us. And not only for response to a crisis, but as we think about how do we create resilient infrastructures, resilient supply chains, no matter what the industry might be. So I'm going to hand it over to Georgette, and she's going to walk through a bit of the journey that we've gone on with some more specific details with numbers, partners, etc. So over to you, Georgette.
Oh, thanks, John. Well, as John mentioned, I'm going to go through what have we accomplished. So many of you may have seen some of the phase 1 work that we have done, but just to summarize some of the things that we've executed under the first phase of it, which was when COVID started through June of last year, where we set the stage where there was massive supply chain disruptions in both supply and demand. And there was a need there was immediate shortages, and we were looking at ways how could additive be leveraged in order to solve this challenge. So what we did initially was build a multi-agency cooperative with the VA, FDA, NIH, and America Makes. And we were quickly reviewing and providing access to PPE designs in order to meet the supply chain needs that were going on during the initial hit of COVID. And what we were able to accomplish in that short amount of time, we were able to identify over 400 manufacturers across the 43 states. So we've started building the ecosystem in order to respond quickly to this need. And then we also were able to help contribute to the matches of over 52 million pieces of PPE that were produced over the time of the crisis, where the efforts that we were doing contributed to that success, whether it was making connections or working with other entities to facilitate those matches. What this ultimately, working on this first phase of it, what the outcome of all this was, or the need that was identified was, we do need a system in place across our nation in order to be able to respond quickly when crisis does arise, and not just for the medical needs, but across all different types of areas. So the phase 2 of the program started in July, and that's really going to be the meat of this presentation today, is what have we accomplished over the last year. And there was 3 main entities that funding came from and supported this initiative, and that included the FDA, NIST, and OSD. And they all lined up nicely. They were done in parallel overall. FDA was documenting what actually happened during COVID and what lessons learned could we have. NIST was looking at regionalization activities and education and workforce development work and on the now time. And then OSD is, okay, let's build something that can be leveraged and be sustaining. So some of the key findings from the FDA that I just wanted to highlight, we have completed this effort, and we reached out to over 360 requesters and suppliers to be able to get some information on, to be able to quantify what the impact Additive did have on the COVID-19 response. So one of the results of this activity that we did with FDA was the key findings, or we identified that flexibility was a core strength of the AM crisis. And what do we mean by flexibility? There were 3 critical aspects of it. When it came to production, we needed to know the what, the when, and the where. And during the time of the crisis, there was, across the U.S., the supply chain did pivot quickly to support the variety of the emergency responses that were going on where AM could fit in. Now, with that said, there was a big need highlighted, that there was a need for better guidance from regulatory bodies and identifying the risk thresholds for new product development and usage, to be able to do some of those quick turn, maybe say quick turn is in a shorter period of time usage, just to identify, bridge the gap at the time. But that was a challenge during COVID. So this, again, a big highlight that was needed to look at for the future. And then also an increased awareness of how does AM fit into being able to be leveraged during these times. Maybe it's not the traditional way of manufacturing. Maybe it won't be long-term either, but how can AM be used to fit these needs for healthcare as well as other key industries? So we took those learnings and applied them to both the NIST and the OSD effort. And then under NIST was focused on regional deployment needs. And one of the things we saw at COVID, a lot of times were people working within their own backyards in order to address the needs. So looking at ways to build up what regions worked well, where were other areas that we could improve on the regionalization activities, where is manufacturing at in these regions, things like that. And the other big thing was looking at the workforce development. And you'll see a couple things in blue, both under NIST and OSD, and those are the things we're going to really dig into a little bit deeper during this webinar today. But we were able to educate the workforce through reskilling and upskilling over 1,000 individuals through the execution of NIST. And then the other thing, we also were able to design blended learning content and certification training programs. And again, you'll hear more from Josh on that today. And then the biggest thing that came out of the NIST work is we did develop a regionalization roadmap. And some of the highlighted needs from developing this roadmap and where future efforts are needed is an increased number of validated designs that are available to be able to just pull from in times of crisis. And how do we do that? Increase design challenges and build trust around the AMCPR Exchange, where we put these validated designs in. highlighting on that need, that's where OSD is really coming in, where we're building this enduring strategic infrastructure. We've made a lot of progress this past year. There's still a couple months that we're still working on. It's going to be a continuous effort. We do have one in place, and we're continuing to look how do we grow this and get both designers, suppliers, and reviewers in this system to be able to respond quickly. We are launching the AMCPR Exchange. It is available. You're going to learn more about that and how to get in your companies into the exchange if you're not already part of it. We did test scenarios, so not just for healthcare applications, but for other industries. And again, we're going to go into detail on that. And then the other key things that we documented regular insights and completed a strategic roadmap for the next steps. And we're in the process of developing our impacts report and playbook that will be completed here and over the next month. And then the future of the program, what you'll see today, we've developed a lot of key activities, the groundwork. It's something that can be used today. But for it to be sustainable and continue to make sure it addresses the needs, there's still future activities that are needed for the program to operationalize the roadmaps and playbook, expand the capabilities, continue cultivating the ecosystem, and all these items that I talked about that we touched on during the phase 2 of the program. With that, I'm going to go into the details of, sorry about that. Josh is going to go into the details of the education and workforce development piece of this. Josh, over to you.
Just waiting for everything to come up live. Georgette, quick check. My mic sound okay?
Yes, they're good for me.
Perfect. And thank you so much. And super excited to be here today to talk a little bit about our educational workforce development efforts as part of AMCPR, which we've aligned directly to our mission, vision, purpose at America Makes and our work within the educational workforce development sphere. As many of you know that engage with us, we have a K through Gray talent pipeline and pathway that we really focus on at the Institute and a lot of our current portfolio and historical portfolio as well. And so we're really excited and, looking forward to a lot of these assets, both making an impact, in a sustainable way moving forward and that have as well. And so when you look at this first slide that Georgette has up now, you'll see across the top banner here, we really wanted to focus on this pathway mentality of looking at, inspiring and building awareness of opportunity advanced manufacturing. As we know, many folks may be displaced, but also the inspiration component, right? As obviously the response was an inspiring response, and to get a part of and become part of that initiative, many initiatives across the states and the nation. One of the things that we definitely wanted to capitalize on was being able to be as agile in the workforce as we were with the technology. And so in order to do that, we needed the right tools to be able to deploy across the continuum of education all the way into industry. And so you'll see things here that really kind of emulate our K through Gray, philosophy. And some of that is all around, creating those programs that both are, e-learning, blended learning based, but still have the rigor of validation. Industry recognized certifications, digital badges, those pieces, but also that opportunity for industry professionals to reskill or upskill. So as we saw the shift in workforce, many folks what they were doing the day before, they weren't doing the next day. And so we needed an opportunity where they could pivot quickly, had access to industry vetted content, but also could validate those skill sets with both digital badges and industry recognized certifications as well. And then one of these last pieces is making sure that we can connect them into many things. I think woven right in the thread here of AMCPR is connecting into that ecosystem, which is critical, right? Because, okay, so I have the training, I have the knowledge, how do I get involved, or where do I plug in, who do I talk to, and how to engage. And so we really focused a lot about that, and we'll walk through a couple of these pieces. I have a couple slides, but really a lot of visuals to share with you as well. Now, Georgette, if you can hit that next slide for me, please. of the things that we first focused on specifically was looking at, we all know that, you know, there's a skills gap in manufacturing in general, right? The awareness gap of that is about 10 times that. You know, folks just don't know what they don't know. And unless we're talking about it and promoting the opportunity, you know, it's up to us to share those great opportunities in manufacturing. And so the response really drove a great opportunity to have that conversation with many folks that, again, were either displaced or now all of a sudden, you know, we're inspired by seeing what the industry could do to respond to a crisis such as this one, and obviously, you know, a different one tomorrow or whatever that may be. And so the opportunity here was to have some of that just, you know, first step of introducing folks to how do I on-ramp into an industry like manufacturing, but more specifically into additive manufacturing. And so talking to parents, talking to students, talking to workers that are already in the industry, but also working on an opportunity to have those folks pivot that maybe were displaced, or again saw an opportunity where yesterday they were doing one thing in a manufacturing facility but then needed the opportunity to slide over as well. I'm just going to unplug my headset real quick as someone may.
Anyone out there in space? Hopefully it's coming in okay. I'll just keep rolling here. But one of the other things that we certainly did here as well is we also looked at developing kind of part of our website as a way to have folks on ramp with us. So they had access to, okay, great, we have these great assets and resources. And so how do I get, how is that available to me? How do I sign up for that? How do I learn more? And so what you're seeing here is some snapshots of the website that we created specifically with the team, but as well as some of the materials that we use to deploy out as well. Next slide for me, please, ma'am. Another big focus, as we know, is we had a lot of folks across, you know, our nation that were in this quote unquote maker movement, right? And so we wanted to be able to capture that, but we wanted to be able, you know, one of the biggest things that we heard and that we saw and actually was part of a gap in our roadmap that we noticed through a number of research projects rolling up to that actually hit, you know, just good timing with when the crisis response kicked in was, you know, a lack of quality content that was geared to, you know, students specifically. And it wasn't that, oh, there's not content or curriculum and those kind of things, but a focus specifically on micro learning. So an opportunity where students can grab that 10-minute clip, that 10-minute module that walks them through a how-to, and understanding specifically looking at additive from A to Z. How do I start with identifying what a problem is? How do I go through designing a solution for that? How do I, you know, how do I prepare a digital file? How do I print it? How do I post-process it? Understanding cybersecurity, we've partnered with MXD specifically throughout this journey as well. And then we leverage some historical stuff that we've done around digital badges with you know, the Fab Lab network and Fab Lab Hub and partners like that, and partners like Bull City that are excellent and leaders in developing this blended content approach. And so what you're seeing here is some snapshots of a young girl named Aaliyah who goes to a, you know, summer camp, and then she comes back, and we have 11 modules that can walk students through, you know, how do they go from idea to printed, you know, finished design or finished print to real object. And so, you know, we piloted these across 6 different entities across the United States, specifically looked at everything from maker spaces to community-based organizations to schools, to folks that are embedded in schools as well. And this will be a sustainable legacy piece that goes out and beyond the project as well. So we're excited to get this out into the stream. Next slide for me, please. One of the other pieces that we specifically looked at was validating a lot of this work. So as we look at that career pathway from middle school to high school to post-secondary into that reskill upskill of incumbent workers, you know, was making sure that we had specifically a way to validate the learning that's happening and do so in a rigorous way, engaging our great membership of 230 plus members, including the Department of Defense. And so we set off to create a new additive manufacturing industry recognized credential in the process. That's pretty rigorous behind that, but it was filling the niche of on-ramping early into the additive industry. So this was not a deep dive. It was looking at a cross collaboration, cross curricular approach to additive across the manufacturing sector. And so we developed that with our friends at NOCTI. NOCTI is the largest third-party validation body in the United States. And so we've piloted this out now. It's actually still live, going out to 132 pilot students across 9 different schools to validate this test. But it was, all rooted into the additive manufacturing body of knowledge, was something that the Institute and many partners collaborated on way back in 2013, but has been refreshed constantly. But also looking at engaging our members and a team of educators, both from high school and post-secondary, to actually, write a knowledge-based assessment, create a performance-based assessment as well for these students as they kind of can validate that learning and kind of step out into the industry as well. Next slide for me, Georgette. One of the last slides that I'll talk about specifically here is all around reskilling and upskilling specifically. So when we looked at one of the immediate needs within the industry was, again, this need of moving, the labor force that was on the factory floor today and the opportunity to reskill them or upskill them to change a role from what they traditionally were doing the day before. And so we provided a scholarship opportunity to some content that was created through the Manufacturing Engineering Education Program. And this was blended content, so it could be accessed online as well. And so we had, over 1,000 participants as part of this program. We're very excited about the work that's been done here. Over 100 different companies, over 3,000 classes have been taken, 3,000 plus hours in here. You can see that final, post-test average of 89%, which means that folks are learning and they're achieving, which is fantastic. But you'll certainly see that, that 48 states, we had folks pretty widespread, across the continuum here. And so I think that speaks to not only the necessity, but the opportunity that folks were leveraging as well. You can see a great quote here from Roush, which was one entity that was utilizing some of the training here. And then the other thing I showed here is just, we're working with our members, right? So you have 3 Degrees out in Chicago. We're putting together a boot camp to train folks in the west side of Chicago later this summer, and we're supporting their great work out there using some of these assets as a member. So deploying parts of our portfolio that we're setting out here to do and really trying to get this out into the ecosystem to make an impact as well. So that was my last slide. I believe, Georgette, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's any questions, I think we can throw that out for a minute or two and answer a couple of those.
That is correct. Josh, let's see if there's anything in the Q&A. Let's see any questions in there. And if there's not,
yeah, certainly feel free to reach out to get engaged in these programs or to scale them up. Our goal is that there will be a legacy of some of this stuff that's sustainable moving forward. And then certainly some of these opportunities to grow and scale for your company or within your community as well. So feel free to reach out and we'll connect on that. Thanks, Georgette.
Thanks, Josh. So next we're going to go through a demonstration of the exchange. Joe Bernice and Jason Sally and Jim Knotts will be taking it over from here. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and Jason give you the.
Yep. Thanks, Georgette. I will share my screen, Joe, if you want to kick it off.
Oh.
Again, thank you everybody for coming here. Again, Joe Berenice, CIO of NCDMM, with Jason Sully, who is our Internet and Cloud Services Manager, and Jim Knotts from the Quotient team, which has been our tried and true development partner. And greatly appreciate their participation in all of this. So really since, last March, April, when all of this started happening, we knew that we needed some sort of interactive platform to engage with all of the supply chain as it was defined to meet a need. We knew we didn't want a database, and anybody that's ever heard me talk understands that I am not a database fan. I I'm very much a firm believer that you have to connect data, you have to connect people, and that really augments the value of everything you're doing. But we needed to take it one step further. One of the reasons that the America Makes AMCPR program is the success that it is all of the great partners that are participating, not only helping in the design of the platform and the interactive network, but we built an entire workflow around essentially reviewing, curating, and validating parts to a degree, primarily in that community use standard. But we needed a way to get those reviewers to understand what needed to be done, get the designers, the real innovation that was happening out in the supply chain and the small to medium enterprises. How do we get them to come in and interact and, you know, have things evaluated by subject matter experts? And the America Makes team did a wonderful job of pulling together all of these outside partners in the beginning, FDA, VA, and the America Makes membership with Texas A&M and NIAR and all of the other great partners. Obviously, Deloitte has been a long-standing great partner with the America Makes program and helped us, you know, put real function around the thoughts that we had. So the AMCPR is the definition of the function of all of the thoughts that we had, you know, early last year when COVID started. So what we want to demonstrate today is just how to engage, and it's going to be relatively quick. We don't have a lot of time, but we want to show you that you, as a supplier, you get in there and get engaged. As a person in need, again, how do you come in and find what you need? As a reviewer, we are always going to be looking for reviewers to participate in this ecosystem of models that we've created. And then most importantly, the designers. We want those designers out there to have an avenue, a channel to submit those designs and have them reviewed by a peer network, a subject matter expert network that can give feedback so we can have better designs to meet the challenges as we move forward, not just in a COVID emergency situation. Maybe it's a forest fire, maybe it's a flood, maybe it's some other natural disaster or man-made disaster for that matter, that we can help mitigate with additive manufacturing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason Sally and Jim Knotts to kind of walk through that interaction. And then I'll come back on and we'll talk about where we're going to go from here, because we understand this is not the end all to be all. We understand with all of the great ideas that are coming out of our partnerships, we are going to make this better and better and better the day after tomorrow and the day after that. So with that, turn it over to Jason.
Thank you very much, Joe. All right, so let's dig into the exchange here. So this is the system. You have a header up here with all your menu items. In this section here, we just kind of have the purpose laid out. And then in this section here is where we can do announcements. So if we do like design challenges in the future, they will show up here. Or if we just need to call something out, we can put it here. Down here in the middle section is just shows you the 3 different roles that you can be. There's also a reviewer too, but trying to get you to join the network. So we have that section for call to action. And then under here, we have a nice part carousel that will just show you the recent parts for quick access to them. Down at the bottom, then we have nice useful links that can be helpful. Some quick links, organizational links for some of our helpful members. And then down here, we have all of our information. So first thing is, whenever you look at this, if you haven't created an account, you don't need an account to get to the site and be able to search, but you do need an account if you want to sign up as a supplier or submit designs or as a requester to request parts. And so that's where you would go up top here in order to create your profile. I'm not going to show you the personal profile just with our limited time, but let's go in and see what it looks like if you're a supplier company, since we have a lot of suppliers on here and you haven't already had your supplier information inserted into the first version of this. We pulled over everybody's information, all the information that we could from the first version into this. So if you are already a supplier, we'll have your stuff in here. You'll still have to go in and update your machines and your materials and hit save in order for your supplier to be searchable and parts to be ordered. So let's go ahead and just look real quick at the supplier profile. So when we come in here, you're going to say, what your company name is. What your roles are. And it can be several different roles. We'll just say we're a designer and we are a part supplier. Basic address, phone number. And then next really gets into, I guess I'm going to fill out a business category. So here, just pick your category. We'll just do manufacturing. Go to next screen. So next you get a chance to say what certifications that your company has, whether it's AS9100 or NADCAP, all the options are here. Next, you would tell us what's your primary materials that you work in. So for this, we're pulling this data from Senvol, which has a match of all the materials that are possible, and they also have all the machines when we get to that piece. So it'll like auto-complete if we start typing here to polymer. So all kind of options you get here. So we'll just pick that and we'll add that item. And we'll just, for the sake of it, just put another one here and say we probably would too. So add that. Then under here, you can get more specific materials if you need to. So this is where when we come down here, we'd say like carbon polymer for an example. And that gives you all the options. When you start typing, you only have to type one character and it will start auto-populating for you. Next is the equipment that you have. So these would be the machines. So we'll do some EOS machines. And again, Senvol data auto-populating for you. So once you put that in, you can just start typing and we'll show you all the options you have available to you. You'll tell us how many of them you have. And we'll go ahead and create that equipment. And we'll just add one more while we're at it. Just pick this one here. So we have 6 of those. All right. So now we have our materials that we're capable of working in. We have the machines that we have at our company. Next, we would check any other specialties that we're capable of doing. So do we do CAD designs? Do we do machining? What about wire cutting? Maybe metallurgy, metallurgical analysis. And then you would hit submit on this. And now you have a fully completed supplier profile. And now you can actually be chosen as a supplier to manufacture any of the parts that somebody would request. So that's a quick overview of how you would do your supplier profile to be included as a supplier. Next, let's look at from a designer standpoint of how you actually get a model in the system. So once you have your account created, you can just come under submit a model. So we have two options for you to start with. The first is a production ready submission. And the second one would be a collaboration submission. So this would be if, say, your part's not quite ready for prime time yet, and you want to collaborate with other suppliers or reviewers or anybody for that matter. You could start a collaboration design and work with them before you're ready to put it out there for the public to be able to order. So next let's look at the start the production ready submission. We'll go in here. First, you're just going to create the disclaimer. And if you already had a design started and say your browser closed or your computer shut down, something happened, when you come back in, it'll ask you, hey, do you want to continue the design that you had started previously? So that's a good feature built into the system. We're just going to go ahead and say no. What we're going to do here is we're going to put in, oops, that's the one. Grab this. What we're going to be making today is putting a design for an activated charcoal mast. You give it a design title, you can give the model number. And then this is important here to understand is you get to say the different level of complexity of your model. If it's a simple design, you're only required to upload 2 files, STL and work instructions. If it's medium complexity, then you're required to upload more documentation. And if it's mission critical, then you're going to be required to upload a lot more documentation. So it really depends on the criticality level of your part, what you want to choose. For ease sake, we'll just choose simple design here. And then you're just going to upload an image of your part. So we're going to go here and pick a model, have a picture of that. Then on the next screen, you get asked if your part requires assembly after it's printed. If it does, you can go yes and upload all the assembly documents that you have or type stuff in if you want. But for this example, we'll just say no and move to the next screen. So on the next screen, you can actually say whether you want your model to be private or if you want it to be public. In this case, we're just going to go ahead and say public, but if you did say private, after your model is accepted in the system, you can go back in and then pick which groups you want to have access to that. We'll look at that when we get to that screen. All right, so next you're saying about the design. So it's just general description. You can put all the information that you need in there. And this is where you get into the materials that you can choose. So you have the overall general material, which should give you a drop down. And then you can get more specific and then the material name. So if we come down here, I just want to show you could just start typing in here. We're going to do polypropylene filament. And we see, since we picked the material name, it knows which specific material and general material that is, so it auto-populated these. Or you can just start at the top and work your way down, either or. And then you'd say the process. So these are all the main processes. For this one, we're going to pick material extrusion. And then you can say the quality standards that are required of an organization in order to create this part. We're just going to say none for this one. And just to show you, you do have some advanced options if you have a data list or end user considerations that you want to upload. We give you lots of ways to get all the documents that you need here. And we're going to go and click next. So next is where you could build out the TDP package, your technical data package. And this is where you would include, I'm not going to go all these, but the step files, if you have them, any of your native CAD files. So you can import those here, whether or not you have a 3D PDF, and you can kind of see the rest. It asks you all of the different types of documents. So it would be required to build a complete TDP file. We're going to just go ahead and say next here. Because we picked simple, we don't have to fill any of that out. But if we would have picked medium or complex, we would have had to upload a couple documents into that section. But since we picked simple, we only really need to have a work instructions in our STL file. So we'll go ahead and choose a work instructions here, and we'll upload a PDF for that. We'll let that get up in there, and then we have an STL file that we will choose. Now, what it'll do when you upload your STL files, it actually convert that into X3D and behind the scenes so that we can actually put it in a 3D viewer that you can move around. We'll see that here in a second. Same with everything. We want to give you as many options as possible for you to get all the information that you need about your model in here. So there's an advanced options that includes more parameters for you. Okay. So we'll get to the next screen. Again, same for this one, testing requirements. If there's any requirements that are necessary for a testing phase, this has to fit into certain parameters, whatever the case may be, here's where you would upload your files for that. And that's the end of it. Now we're at the last step and we can hit review. So this just gives us, as the submitter, a quick view of everything that we put in to make sure everything's right. If anything's wrong, we go back and change it, but this all looks good. So we're going to go ahead and submit that. So as a designer, now that that's submitted, one good thing about our system is it's not, as Joe had mentioned, right? This is not just a database, right? These designs and models that get uploaded go through a rigorous screening and review process. So because of that, we have a bunch of reviewers that are invited in the system from different manufacturing fields out there that will be helping us review these models. And so this is where the review piece, if you're a reviewer in the system, this is actually how I'm going to show you in a second here, how you would actually get into review a model. So as a screener, this is for us. We would just go ahead and screen the design just to make sure it's good before we would set it to a reviewer. I'm just going to say this one looks good. And then you get to pick, the screener would be able to pick who is it a simple review or is it a detailed review? If it's a detailed review, they can choose up to five reviewers, or if it's simple, then they can just go ahead and pick one reviewer. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick myself, and we're going to go ahead and say this pass screening. So now what that would have done, if you're a reviewer in the system, you would have got an email, and you would also get a notification, which we'll look at in a little bit, to let you know that this is out there ready for you to review. So if you do come in here, we will go under, where to go? Second, let me go back here. Okay, screener. Where's my design? Oh, I got it. Oh, here it is, review design. Well, that one's not showing up. Let me see, maybe I have another one. Maybe I did something wrong on that one, but let's go back in here. We'll look at the first version of this. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm losing it here. This is not taking me to the right page. So
I think you selected yourself, and I think you're not in as that user. I think it's your first email.
Oh, yeah, that is right. You're right. So good call. So I actually did select a different account that I have as the reviewer. Thanks, Jim. That was throwing me off there. So we'll go ahead and log in as this guy, and we'll come back to the dashboard here. And I'm just going to go ahead and review this design real quick, just so we can move it past this piece. But if you are a reviewer, it would show up right in your review dashboard. And then you would see you can click here to review the design. It's going to show you all the information as we saw in the review that you can do. And if they like it, they can put some notes in here. They can attach any files that they might have if it's relevant. And they can either not pass it or pass it. If it gets passed at this point, Now this will move this, this design actually to be searchable and orderable. So once that gets in there, I'm just going to log out of this account since this is my admin account here, and we'll see a couple extra stuff, and log back in as my other account. And we're back in the system here. So now we showed how, as a supplier, you would put your supplier profile on there. We then showed how you can submit a design if you're a designer. Now let's show like how do you search a part if you're a requester and you need to get a part manufactured and choose suppliers to manufacture that for you. So we'll go into the search, and for this one, we know that we were looking for a charcoal mask. So you can do searching. Let me take that out for a second. I just want to explain something over here, what all you get. So you do have a bunch of filters, just like you would see if you were on YouTube or eBay and you're searching for something. We want to give you lots of different ways to be able to get to the specific type of part that you're looking for. So you can filter by, you know, the material, the process, all kinds of things in here. So we're going to make sure you can do that. Say you actually try to find a part and you can't, you can request a new part to be manufactured here. And you can go through that process. We won't touch on that today, but there's going to be a lot more functionality than what we're going over today, with just a short amount of time we have to look at this. So I do, you know, kind of, you know, hope you guys get out there and get in there and play around and see some of the other functionality. But let's go ahead and say we want to search for our parts. So we're going to do charcoal and just use the search filter. And that's going to give us our activated charcoal mask. And this is the one we had just put in. So this is the model page that they would see where they can evaluate if this is the exact type of model part that they actually want to order. Here's a little 3D viewer that we were showing you. It generated the X3D for us, so you can take a look at it in 3D space. You can zoom in, zoom out. You can view the description that was put in. The file downloads are all available here. And then you can also now download all of the files into one zip. So you don't have to do them all individually. And then there's the comments here. So this is how we can start doing an order. So let's go ahead and do that. So when we say we want to do an order, what it's going to do is it's going to go out there and find all the suppliers who are capable of making this part based on what was entered. We can see it's matching up the PP general type, the filament, or propylene filament, and polymer. We can see all the manufacturers that match to that. You get a nice map. You can kind of do a radius look if you're trying to find something a little bit closer to you. So you have this nice map that you can go to kind of find your person. But your suppliers also then show up down here, and you can find out more information about them and go ahead and select this supplier. We'll just select this one to manufacture our part. So here you would just say, how do they want to contact you, either by phone or email? You get the choice. And what's the delivery instruction? Like where's it need delivered to? So we're just going to say it needs to go here. When do you need it by? And we'll just say we need it by next week. And how many do you need of this? I'm going to go ahead and say 1,000. You can put in additional notes as you want. Then once you go ahead and send this request, if you are a supplier that they chose, you will get an email letting you know that you have been chosen. And when you come out here, you'll see that in your supplier dashboard, or under notifications, you can come here to see any notifications that came to you either as a supplier, designer, or requester. I'm kind of out of time, so I think that covers the main parts of it. But if anybody has any questions or wants to see anything further, just let us know and we'll show you that. Thanks. Turn it back over to Georgette.
Thank you, Jason. All right, can everybody see my screen again?
Yes.
With this, Joe's going to wrap it up here. So back to you, Joe.
Yep. Yeah, again, thank you, Jason, and thank you, team that helped make that possible. Again, this quite a diverse team that really helped, feed the content, feed the functionality, the features that are out there. And I want to stress, and there was a question in the Q&A, is this a COVID-specific platform? Absolutely not. And quite honestly, with minimal adjustments, this doesn't even have to be an additive specific platform. By changing the supplier input form, you could very easily turn this into a traditionally manufactured platform to exchange designs, identify manufacturers, and move on. And also, there is opportunity very specifically to run challenges through here. We run a lot of challenges through America Makes, so it's set up to accept that and manage those challenges and then make available. Some of the participants here have been in the challenges before. There was also one question related to, does the platform handle the transactional piece of the exchange of goods? And that is on our roadmap, and we can talk more about that at another time. But there are opportunities to manage that transactional piece. But that, for this particular deployment, this particular release, has been kind of a third rail because it is going to be pretty intense. So we stayed away from that at this point, but it is on the roadmap, and we can talk about it. But again, I want to thank all of these great partners that were here, participated in the development of this platform. Everything from very small businesses on the Pampton 3D side to very large businesses like Siemens Energy and Stratasys, to help us out. And again, all of the reviewers, all of the subject matter experts, as you see on the screen, that are going to help us to review these models and provide real value back to the designers and make sure that we have a good product that someone in need can identify their product and then also identify somebody who can make it and get it to them effectively. That was identified as a key component of the system way back when this started, when COVID started, but that is going to be ubiquitous across crises that exist or across manufacturing disruptions that may exist. Again, I want to thank everybody for participating and turn it back over to Georgette.
Joe, one other enhancements. Sorry.
No, I apologize. I forgot about this. Future, where are we going to go with this particular thing? We couldn't build everything we wanted. We had all these great ideas, but we couldn't do it all. We had to meter our efforts. Things like forums, LinkedIn style forums for interaction of all participants in the platform has been identified as something that we really need to get in there as soon as possible. On the back end, version management, curating these models in a very effective way, very similar to how we were curating them in a manual process when we were interacting directly with the NIH model repository. The real-time messaging, to allow the admins and the users to get back and forth, have it really be a communication platform. And that's why I love having Quotient on the team, because they've done forums and real-time messaging across the entire Smithsonian platform. Those of you who have been to the Smithsonian platform, the Quotient team actually built a system by which they are managing the artifacts and the data around those artifacts and the forums of all the people interacting with those artifacts. It's really kind of cool. But we're looking at that as an enhancement of feature development that we want to have on there. Dashboards, again, dashboards specific to the user. So when you log into the system, you see what's important to you and not a general screen that's available to everybody. System-generated status updates on your model. So if a designer submits a model, can they know very, very cleanly and very, very quickly where their model is in that review process? As Jason pointed out, we've got a review process that starts with a preliminary screening just to make sure, we're talking about a manufactured good that belongs on the system and not a dozen of cookies, even though technically baking is additive manufacturing. But where your model sits in that process is very, very important. Enhanced supplier metrics. Who's touching what, where, when, and why? Again, from a back-end perspective, we want to know that information, but that's also very important for all of our stakeholders to know who's interacting and how often and what's being done. All of those metrics are very, very important. And then integration with other repositories. Obviously, we have a very close relationship with NIH. We've got a very close relationship with the DLA system of JAMX for their additive manufacturing models. But we want to make sure, and we've built the system with all the hooks on the outside, that we can expose our data and we can gather in exposed data using APIs or other means to bring all of the models together and make everything available to that end user, whether they be the supplier that wants to make something, whether they be the requester who needs something. or a designer that wants to get some ideas. So all of that is on our roadmap to build out in the future. But this is also not the end all to be all. I'm sure over the next 2 months, as users get in there, we're going to get lots more suggestions in reference to, wow, wouldn't it be great if? I love hearing that statement because I know the next thing that's going to come out of that person's mouth is some great feature enhancement that if we implement, it's going to help lots of people. So I really like to hear that. I know we're going to hear that over the next 2 months. And again, I encourage everybody to get in, figure out what this is about, talk to us, play with the system, interact with the system, make sure you register, and again, have fun, get in here. Again, appreciate everything. Thank you all for participating. And now back over to you, Georgette.
Thanks, Joe. We do have a couple questions. I know we've been trying to answer some in the Q&A here, but I wanted to just bring up a couple questions that were noted here. The one is there a FAQ at beginning to help folks understand how to categorize their design as mission critical, etc.?
Yes, we've created several documents, user guides, essentially, for how to partake in the system. And it is our intent to parse those down into specific FAQ action items. So that will be available on the site, as Jason pointed out, on the main page. There's lots of useful sites near the bottom. So if you have a question on how to walk through something, we hopefully are answering it there. And if not, then it will be there shortly.
And then related to that too, they asked if there was a curatorial review board who will be vetting submitted designs.
I didn't understand that one word you said there, Georgette. I apologize.
It's curatorial.
Curatorial.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yes. And again, as you saw on a previous slide, there was a whole bunch of organizations on there. America Makes members and some of our government partners and organizations. We are not establishing a board right now, but that group with John and his team on the America Makes program are going to be establishing, this is our initial screener review set. These are the people that are going to engage in that screening. Is this appropriate to be in our environment kind of screening? As it gets through the simple or the moderate or the complex designs, yes, those reviews are going to be very, very specific and very, very heavy on the subject matter experts to make sure that we have the right people reviewing the right items. And that process, as I'm sure with a lot of these processes, are going to evolve as we get users in the system to make it more efficient for the end user.
And Joe, just to add to that, because to be a reviewer in the system, it does need to be approved by the admin of our exchange. Not anybody can just go in and say that they're a reviewer. So
Correct.
we will be vetting that. And then the last one here, are the suppliers vetted in any way? You want to answer? I can comment too.
Yeah, we are not doing a full vetting of the suppliers. Again, we expect users to put in the information, the supply set, to put in the information that is appropriate to their activities, what they do on a normal course of business. Can somebody put in information that is inaccurate or less than accurate? Yes, they can. But as our admins determine those things are occurring, again, we hope they don't. That's not where we're going to be. But if by chance that does happen, yes, the admins have the ability to go in and correct. And the supplier, quite honestly, has the ability to go in and update their supplier profile at any time. The supplier's in control of their profile, but the admins have ultimate control. We can correct, remove anything that is inappropriate or does not belong on the site or is inaccurate.
Yeah, Joe, this is Mark Cotelier. I just want to add something. I want to make clear as I add it that I'm representing Deloitte, not America Makes. And so Joe or John or Georgette, please feel free to correct me as I try to add some clarity here. I think this question speaks to the broader issue of is there a guarantee here? And there was a question earlier about transactional capabilities as well. All of those things are on the roadmap. Given the scope and timing of what we're able to do here, it really is going to fall to the users and the community and the overall ecosystem to vet one another's and verify for one another that the products are fit for use. So at this point, we're talking about the exchange and the facilitation of the connection without that guarantee. Is that guarantee valuable? Absolutely. Right. And that's why it's on the roadmap. But it is at this point, I would characterize it. And Joe, I'll ask you to comment or clarify if you think I've got this wrong. You know, a little bit of a buyer beware at this stage of the game.
Yeah, and I agree. And that was well put, Mark. Thank you for that clarity. Not so much a buyer beware, but as we start to get into the forums, yes, we do expect the requester, when they receive their items, we expect that feedback. And if the supplier is meeting expectations, we want to know that. If the supplier is not meeting expectations, we want to know that, because we have the opportunity then to review and correct. And, you know, we don't want to, and I stay away from this, we are not evaluating and qualifying suppliers. We do not have any qualification system. It is an open door. We do let suppliers come in because we want to get the entire supply chain. And Georgette said at the beginning, we have over 400. She's being a little bit sheepish on that number. We are almost at 500 suppliers within the system today. And I would expect over the next 2 months that we get close to 600. So those numbers are going to keep rising. We are going to get more suppliers. Some of those suppliers may not be in business a year from now, and that's okay, because that's just the nature of business. We've seen that happen through COVID. But again, it is, I don't want to say so much a buyer beware, but this is a community. And one thing that the America Makes program has been really great at is forging those relationships and keeping those sustained relationships together so that the community works for the community. That's what we want in the end. We want the America Makes community working for the America Makes community and the U.S. as a whole in the manufacturing sector. Thank you, Georgette.
Thank you, Joe. I think we covered all the questions, and I know there were some questions prior to this last slide here about the future enhancements. If we did not, if we did not answer that question, please put another one in, and at the end we'll address it. And I just wanted to note there was one question that came in a little later on the EWD piece about is there a URL for the micro learning and digital badges? There is a response in there. And bottom line, please reach out to Josh that will be available as we get them a little further along. And Josh is your point on anything EWD related. So any other questions on that, please let us know. With that, we're going to move on to the next section, the scenario execution. I'm going to move over to Mark to talk about this section.
Terrific. Thank you, Georgette. My name is Mark Cotelier. I'm a managing director at Deloitte, and also have been, and we have been a member of Deloitte of America Makes for well, I think since the inception of the Institute. So very pleased, and in fact, I'll say proud to have had the opportunity to work with America Makes and all the other ecosystem members to bring this to life. As I thought about the scenarios, and trust me, I will talk about the scenarios, I was really moved by and reflective of the overall mission of America Makes as an institute, and almost not to the point of actually going to the America Makes website today and noting that if you go there and look at the first line on the first page of the America Makes website, what you'll see is a sentence talking about, and I'm looking at it now, how America Makes the mission is to innovate and accelerate AM and 3D printing to increase our nation's global manufacturing competitiveness. And I see this, we see this, the AMCPR initiative as squarely serving that mission. Beyond the project calls and the research and development that America Makes funds and promotes and catalyzes and convenes and coordinates, is the ability to present that capability and to have a demonstration of that capability to serve the United States in peacetime and in wartime, in crisis and in normal times. And that's really what we see the AMCPR effort as doing. In order to do that, as Joe just talked about, there's lots of elements to it, but it rolls up into two big chunks as we see it. And that's what this slide really depicts. On the right side is the AMCPR Exchange, and then on the left side is the ecosystem. And internal to the project, we've really thought about this. Our metaphor has often been the 911 system. It's hard to imagine, but there was a day when you couldn't dial 911. And so if you had an emergency, there was no one to call. There was nothing to call, right? And so today, when you have an emergency, when there's a crisis, if you will, you know that you can pick up the phone, that a system exists for you to pick up the phone and make the call for crisis response. That's the exchange. The other thing you really need to know is that someone will answer the phone, right? That's the ecosystem. And so these two pieces really come together in an important way in order to drive this effort. And we hope, I will hope, the 911 was invented in Huntsville, Alabama in 1964. I got that little history lesson as part of this project, right? I certainly hope that 50 years from now, this sort of capability, or 10 years from now, this sort of capability is as ingrained in our manufacturing community as 911 is in our society. Let's go to the next slide if we could, Georgette. This is part of the result of AMCPR, and I think it's really important beyond the fact that there are artifacts. What this illustrates, and we call this lovingly sort of our drug bust photo, because we're imagining, when you see on TV, when they've made a big drug bust or an arms bust, they array everything out to say, hey, here's all the good stuff we got. And this is a subset of the items that we have created as part of what we call scenario execution. We can go to the next slide, although I really love this slide, Georgette, but let's go to the next one anyway. The key behind AMCPR, as this team saw it and as America Makes led it, was to move beyond a theoretical or a whiteboard exercise. That is, we didn't just want to, think about crisis response in the abstract. We wanted to see if it would actually work. And so this team has put in tremendous effort, and we saw a couple of slides earlier, the number of different people that were involved, the number of different organizations were involved. We'll see that again here, and this is in many ways how they were involved. We wanted to see if it would work. And then the question is, how do you know if it works, right? And we've had the question already in the chat about, well, is this just about COVID? And the answer to that question is, as Joe said, emphatically no. The AMCPR effort was maybe motivated or catalyzed by COVID, but from the start, it's been about preparing for the next crisis, responding to this crisis, preparing for the next crisis, and doing so in a way that leaves behind an enduring infrastructure for the additive and advanced manufacturing communities to test and build their capabilities. And so we created these scenarios. The idea behind the scenarios was to adopt a really diverse approach, diverse in terms of complexity, diverse in terms of scope, diverse in terms of material, diverse in terms of process, diverse in terms of application, to think about how can we demonstrate how rapid response with digitally distributed manufacturing in the form of additive manufacturing, how can we demonstrate how that works? And so down the left side of this slide, what you see are the 7 scenarios that we define. And so, you'll see scenario A, which, by the way, and I've got my list here, we got to think 3D Systems, America Makes, the VA, for that. This is about swabs. Scenario B, so COVID. Scenario B is about face masks. That's the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, America Makes again, the VHA again, Tronics, Forecast 3D, Sea, Air, and Space. COVID again. Scenario C is a hose coupling, a very simple device cleverly named Earthquakes Earn Enmity. This is an application where we imagine a natural disaster, and can we provide basic hose couplings in multiple sizes that have been approved and are fit for use? The answer is yes, and we're grateful to UT El Paso, which is an American Make Satellite Center, for their help there. 3D Inc., IC3D, Rapid Applications Group, Stratasys, and Markforged, all of which participated in creating these couplings. Scenario D is a military sustainment application for a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter. There we had the Army and ZVerse on 2D to 3D conversion. 3D Systems and EOS on the build side, all participating to demonstrate that, yeah, you could put a helicopter back in the air. Scenario E is gas turbines. So this is energy generation. And that was led in large part by our friends at Siemens Energy. We had NIAR, the National Institute for Aviation Research, which is also an American Make Satellite Center, involved, and Stratasys and Siemens, again, both on the production side, making these turbines and helping them to be validated. Scenario F, tooling takes too much time. This one is really interesting to me because it demonstrates that we're not necessarily just talking about direct parts production through additive manufacturing. And remember what Joe said, that there is no reason that this approach, and in fact, AMCPR stands for advanced manufacturing, not additive manufacturing. No reason this approach can't be used to demonstrate rapid response, crisis production capability for advanced manufacturing in general. And in fact, our hope is that we continue to demonstrate those capabilities. Here we had Hometown Products and Freshmade 3D, NIAR again, TechSolve, all working together to produce the tooling, in this case sand molds, to create a T-joint that can be that is then cast for subsequent use. And then scenario G, which proved to be the one scenario that was too tough for us to get done here, was about manufacturing syringes. But the key values of the overall scenario approach was that we do not want to create scenarios that we know we can win at. We want to create scenarios that are going to test the boundaries of the capability set of not just of America Makes, but of the entire ecosystem, because that's how we learn. And so if you look in the upper right-hand side of this slide, you'll see the different dimensions that we chose to exercise the overall effort. So we thought explicitly about things like process and task complexity, right? Stakeholder capability risk, because we've got large and small, experienced and not experienced producers out in the ecosystem. Product complexity. How difficult is this product going to be to make from a materials perspective, from a process perspective, from a design perspective? Ecosystem and participant complexity. We've got scenarios where we went to one group specifically, and scenarios where we put it out to the broader group, to the broader community. And then connectivity risk, recognizing that, hey, when crisis strikes, you might not be able to dial up the internet real easy. And so can we provide synchronous and asynchronous capability so that people can use the AMCPR Exchange and processes in lots of different contexts? So we are really proud of the work that has been done here, and anxious to continue the work, because we see the ability to apply the lessons learned, and I'll say again, the mantra that we use here is one that we borrowed from the military: drill like we fight and fight like we drill. Right. So another purpose of the scenarios is to continue the capability development process, whether that is at an industry or sector level, whether that's at an agency level, whether that is, for specifically developed crisis scenarios. The idea is that this exchange exists not just as a means to react to a crisis when it emerges, but as an approach to preparing for crisis before it emerges. And in doing that, to build the overall capability of the additive and advanced manufacturing ecosystems in the United States. And that, to me, is what really puts it squarely on and in the mission of the overall institute, and frankly, for Manufacturing USA. Georgette, before I ramble on, let's go to the next slide, which I think is my last slide.
Oh,
Just wanted to provide one more example to drill down into sort of that idea of complexity. And so what you see on the left-hand side of this slide is is the way that we thought about things. In this case, juxtaposing product complexity and ecosystem complexity to show how we attempted to spread around the different scenarios so that they're testing boundaries in different domains. And so if you look at the scenario, at the full scenario report, which runs 85 some pages and digs down into each of these scenarios, and I think will be eventually available once it's cleared, we adopted a higher lower spectrum for all of these things so that we could be sure that we could mix and match the boundaries, the boundary conditions of what the scenarios enabled, allowed us to test. And that led to some really critical learning that we intend to continue through future scenario tests about enhancing the exchange functionality. Joe's already talked an awful lot about that, about engaging the broad ecosystem, particularly for scenario testing and crisis response, but also for capability building, to maintain a sense of urgency. Again, continuing to execute scenarios with different complexities, narratives, and ecosystem participants so that we can continue to learn so that when that next crisis strikes, as we know it will, whether it's COVID or whether it's, hey, hurricane season just started, or whether it's a freeze down in Texas, or whether it's the ports getting jammed up, whatever it is, so we have the ability to respond. And then also to, as the chat has illustrated, to continue advancing our ability to coordinate across the ecosystem to learn what sorts of enhancements the community needs, so that regardless of whether they use the AMCPR Exchange or whether they take those lessons into their broader market activities, the Institute can continue fulfilling its mission of driving advanced and additive manufacturing forward. I'm going to stop there, Georgette, and turn it back to you. But again, I will say that how grateful we are to have had the opportunity to work on this project with you guys. It has been among the projects that I'm most proud of in my career. So thank you very much.
thanks, Mark. There was one question that came up. I'm going to say it's a combination of the scenarios as well as the exchange, but the question is there a default license designated for the design submitted? And there is not a default license specifically for a design submitted.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. I'm not sure I understand the question. I think that I can guess at what the appropriate answer would be, and I think America Makes has the final word on this, which is to say that as you when you put something on the exchange, you are releasing it for general use by the community unless you restrict it. And Joe or Jason, I don't know if you want to add to that.
One thing
correct, Mark. I'm sorry, go ahead, Georgette.
I was just going to note that there is, just to highlight that there is a way to restrict if you need just certain approved people to see a design. There is a way to do that on the exchange. And we actually demonstrated that during scenario D with the Black Hawk Down one, where only certain people that had the right credentials could actually view the design.
Yeah, there is a means to restrict and make available, again, models to a small subset of people. And I'll use the example of the challenges that might be run through the America Makes through this platform. If we set out a challenge, then each individual designer will be submitting a design and does not want the community at large to participate or see in that design because it's part of a challenge. That design is specifically held internal to the reviewers, to the screeners, to whatever stakeholder is sponsoring that particular challenge. And when/if that design is to be released to the community, it shall be. If it is never to be released to the community and it is a private design for the stakeholder, then that's where it stays. John, you want to add anything to that?
No, sir. I think you covered it well. I mean, I guess kind of just transition from there into a little bit of where we're going next. So I think we've just spent almost an hour and a half walking through what's been a very multi-dimensional program that many folks across the additive and advanced manufacturing community have been engaged with. And there's lots of different on-ramps in order for you to get engaged moving forward. So, you know, if we think about what does this mean as we look ahead, this is, I use this idea of a do loop when we first got started. In my mind, we've just executed the very first iterations of this. So we've now put together an enduring infrastructure that can be used and in our opinion should be utilized as a backbone that we can continue to add content against. But we, you know, as you can see from some of the questions that came in, which are some of the same questions that we've been asking ourselves, you know, where do we go next with this? So there's a variety of ways that you can engage and interact with the exchange and AMCPR as a whole as we move forward, whether that's leading by, and Georgette will talk and close out a little bit by how to get your capabilities included within the system. So what Jason walked us through, you know, you can influence by helping us understand where does this system need to grow and shift towards. If you look at our roadmap, you'll see areas where the capabilities need to be expanded in order for this to be even more effective. So we've been talking about this primarily as it relates to additive manufacturing as the core technology, while including a number of other enabling technologies. But how do we continue to grow this system? How do we then, as it grows, get more from the community engaged, whether that's a hub and spoke model or, you know, whatever the most appropriate model is. It's really all about this infrastructure that's being built. And now we need to think about how do we, you know, continue to pressure test it? How are we, you know, if we look at this last item here, sharing investments so that we're all working again towards a common goal. We all want to be more resilient and we all want to be better prepared in time of crisis. And I think in many ways, the pieces that we need to put in place are much the same. So how do we make sure that we put a target out there and start working against that? So we have put together AMCPR in an attempt to address some of those questions. We absolutely recognize that there are many questions that are beyond what we've been able to do in this very first phase. Can't close out without again thanking the support from Department of Commerce, Department of Defense, and the FDA in order to make this all come together. We now have this initial demonstrator. So it is about how do we take this and leverage it and move forward and build off of it. So hand it over to Georgette to kind of close out to explain how to get engaged, and if anyone has any questions, where to take those. So thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, John. So where do we go from here? You know, to wrap some things up, you know, go in and join the exchange. Following this meeting, we will be sending out an email with the slides, some information on training, which I'll touch on here at the very end for the exchange, as well as information on, you know, how to go in and join the exchange. But bottom line, whether you have either need to create or update your profile, you know, biggest thing is go in. There's no cost to it. The more people we have in the system, the better prepared we're going to be able to quickly respond to needs as they come up. The other big thing here is volunteer. So you saw that there is a large group of people that have been supporting this program to date through scenario testing, through our education workforce development initiatives. We've had several strategy workshops. You know, there's been even more than we were able to highlight that have supported this program, so that we'll continue to, you know, we're looking for the voice of the end users here in order to make sure that this program is meeting the needs of our nation. and then also amplifying our networks. So there's going to be opportunities to volunteer and support this program, and then engage, whether it's through go to our website, email, social media. I don't know if you've seen, there is a lot of social media going on this program, highlighting the successes and activities that are ongoing here. So I definitely wanted to leave you with those three things. A couple things on the exchange that I did want to highlight before we leave. There is a feedback button on the exchange. It's across the whole, when you go in there, please leverage it. It's there to get information from all of you. If you see something missing or something that is working, anything like that, please use that feedback button. So I wanted to highlight that is there. And the other thing that we are working on to put in there is other certified testing facilities that can be leveraged during time of crisis to do the testing. We're working with Texas A&M on that, so that will be available in the upcoming months as well. Because I know there's definitely some questions on reviewers and approvers and things like that throughout this presentation. So I mentioned the upcoming, we are going to have an exchange training for anybody that's new to the system. That will be on June 21st, and you'll see more information on this when we send them a follow-up to this webinar. With that, big thanks for everybody's time. I know we're right at time here. If there were additional questions or anything that wasn't answered, we'll make sure we get those out there. But again, I want to thank everybody for their time. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call me, email me, reach out, anything. And I'm happy to answer or get you more involved. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.